Hopefully you've all found your way to your table. We are going to start the program. And as you're taking your seat, I just want to point out the awesome coffee mugs on your table, new this year, thanks to Land's End, and you get to take this coffee mug home. I'm very glad I found this right away because with 2 little kids and no sleep, I need coffee. How many people in the crowd say an amen? Come on. Are you guys awake this morning? It's early. Have some more coffee if you're not. So we're just going to give about 10, 15 seconds, let everybody find their seat. All right. Welcome to the 6th annual Save Our Lakes Breakfast. I'm Lee Mills from NBC 15. Happy to be with you once again and on a new schedule, so I'm excited about that. No longer having to work until 11 p.m., which is never good when you have to be at a breakfast the next morning. So that worked out really well for me this year. But it's really great to see everybody once again and just look at how many people are in this room, filling it all the way to both ends. It's awesome to see so many people who are interested in working to keep our lakes clean. I know a number of you have supported Clean Lakes Alliance since day one, so thanks to each and every one of you who have been here year after year, who've been here, and this is the 6th year. It's really amazing to have so many stewards here in our community. Today's program is going to focus on some key successes over the past year, as well as what we need to do as a community moving forward to achieve healthy lakes. I know a lot of us in the room come from different parts of the Madison area, and so I want you, when you think about the lakes, to think about us being one community with one water. Speaking of that, behind me, this is really cool. You see a popular view of Madison. Of course, no one gets tired of this view. This is a sunrise, and it's an actual shot of the sunrise right out here. So you will notice, maybe you noticed it was a little dark when you first walked in. So this is in real time, just allowing you to experience the beautiful sunrise over Lake Monona. Also, on the screens to my left and right, you can see these are live streaming images of Lake Mendota and Lake Wabeesa. So this is on Facebook Live, so if you want to like this, go to the Clean Lakes Alliance page, or I think you can friend Executive Director James Ty and access it that way as well. We have a great program planned today, including watershed experts, elected officials, and community leaders. We're also going to hear from Dr. Mark Riedel, a hydrologist for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, with more than 20 years of experience on complex water quality and restoration projects. Dr. Riedel will discuss success stories in other communities and tell us how one community, one water is the way to achieve positive results. First, I'm happy to introduce Clean Lakes Alliance Community Board member and partner at presenting sponsor Foley and Lardner, Sarah Slack.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for getting up early to join us this morning to support clean and healthy lakes. As Lee indicated, I'm with Foley and Lardner. Our firm has a long history of involvement in the Madison community and of supporting Madison area nonprofit organizations. So when the Clean Lakes Alliance was being formed, it was a natural fit for us to join the cause. Foley has had the privilege of being involved with the Clean Lakes Alliance for many years, and we have proudly provided Clean Lakes Alliance with pro bono legal services since the organization's beginnings. In 2013, when the organization grew, we were honored to be able to provide the Clean Lakes Alliance with an in-kind contribution of office space in our offices right on Lake Mendota, so staff can be inspired by the lakes and connected to the Clean Lakes Alliance's cause. Today's breakfast and the annual report are made possible by the generosity of Clean Lakes Alliance's many sponsors and partners. We would like to thank our sustaining founding sponsors, Spectrum Brands, Land's End, the Madison Community Foundation, and Foley & Lardner. We would also like to thank the sponsors of the report and this breakfast, including Foley & Lardner, Spectrum Brands, Alliant Energy, C.G. Schmidt, American Transmission Company, the Yahara Lakes Association, and all of the table sponsors. Finally, before we move on to the program's main events, we want to remind you that working to improve the quality of the lakes in the Yahara watershed can only be accomplished through your help. On each of your tables is an envelope, and at the end of the breakfast, we will ask you to make a pledge to support the lakes. Your dollars will help reduce phosphorus in the lakes and will also provide for important volunteer and educational programs, both of which we will be discussing throughout the program this morning. I'm also excited to share with you that a few minutes ago, an individual pledged $10,000 to support the lakes. That is a great start toward our goal of raising $50,000 today. What will this money do? Well, $50,000 is enough to fund phosphorus reduction projects that would remove roughly 250,000 pounds of algae from the lakes. So please help us achieve that goal. With respect to that, table captains, please collect pledges in the envelopes at the center of the table, and please either leave it with a Clean Lakes Alliance staff member or with one of the volunteers on your way out. Now, I'd like to introduce Clean Lakes Alliance Executive Board Chair and retired DNR Regional Director, Lloyd Egan. Yes. I have more to say, though. Lloyd is one of the original members of the Clean Lakes Alliance Community Board and the winner of last year's Lumley Leadership Award for volunteerism. Please join me in welcoming Clean Lakes Alliance Executive Board Chair, longtime friend of the lakes, and tireless volunteer, Lloyd Egan.
On behalf of Clean Lakes Alliance, thanks to everyone for coming. I don't know if this is our record, but it sure looks like it. We don't seem to have an empty spot at a table. 2016 was a successful year for Clean Lakes Alliance, thanks to the work we all did, but thanks to some luck from Mother Nature. In regards to water clarity, 2016 was one of the best on record in recent years. While we did have the wettest September on record, we didn't have large or intense rain events, which meant that runoff was easier to control. The algae-eating Daphnia rebounded, and warm lake temperature killed off the invasive spiny water flea, which helped water clarity. But our work as a community contributed to the lucky weather hand that we were dealt. Projects around the watershed helped us achieve our largest diversion of phosphorus ever. In 2016, community projects helped divert 13,600 pounds, which is 29% of the way to our goal of 46,200 pounds of diverted phosphorus by the year 2025. At your table, you have each been given a copy of the 2016 State of the Lakes Annual Report. Clean Lakes Alliance has been putting out this one-of-a-kind report for the past 6 years. In it, you will find information on the condition of our lakes, phosphorus reduction programs, fundraising efforts, volunteer programs, and community awareness. Unfortunately, new challenge like increased climate change, new invasive species will make it difficult to achieve our goal by 2025. A little later in the program, we'll tell you how we hope to intensify our efforts in 8 key areas through an aggressive plan called Plan 2020 in order to keep on track and address these new challenges. Of course, none of our community's past work or our future plans would be possible without building important partnership with state, county, and local government. Several months ago, the important Yahara Wins collaborative effort went from pilot phase to full implementation. This partnership, led by the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District, brings together the City of Madison, Dane County, and over 20 other municipalities around the watershed to collectively reduce phosphorus load to our lakes. The Clean Lakes Alliance is proud to be a funder of the Yahara Wins effort. Clean Lakes Alliance is fortunate to have a dynamic volunteer community board comprised of nearly 40 government, business, and community leaders. Additionally, a Friends board comprised of nearly 20 people manages fundraising, and multiple committees help guide policy, strategic direction, and community engagement. If you are on a Clean Lakes Alliance board or committee, please stand up. Thank you. Finally, I'd like to recognize the Clean Lakes Alliance staff for growing the organization, pulling together speakers, videos, the report, the community for this breakfast, and for making sure we all think about the lakes. Let's give them a hand, too. And now, please enjoy breakfast and a cup of coffee in the branded mugs donated by Land's End. Be sure to take your mug with you when you leave today. It's our gift to you. And we'll resume the program in 20 minutes.
Feel free to continue eating your delicious breakfast, and we're going to move on with the program. As you probably know, each year the Clean Lakes Alliance sets out with goals designed around the Yahara Clean Strategic Action Plan. If you didn't know, that plan has 14 strategic actions that are aimed at reducing that algae creating phosphorus in the Yahara watershed by 50%. So the Clean Strategic Plan, 14 actions to reduce phosphorus by 50% by the year 2025. So that's kind of the big goal if you're following along. Some of the actions are fairly easy, but some face new challenges that will require creative work and solutions by business, government, and community leaders. So here is a closer look at what's being done and what needs to be done in the coming years.
What you really have out here is the best of the best.
Every year, we just keep on notching it up.
The numbers are pretty amazing.
For everything we've learned since 2012, when all corners of the community came together and committed to the Yahara Clean Strategic Action Plan, there are new lessons all the time.
This is a very big deal.
And new challenges. The goal together to reduce more than 13,000 pounds of phosphorus going into the lakes, which translates to 6.8 million pounds of algae. So, thank you, and I would be a bad wife if I didn't say, this is not in my script, if I wouldn't say a quick thank you to my husband, Sam Sorensen, and our video production company, Studio 88, for producing that video. He always does such a great job. Okay. I'll be allowed to go back home after saying that. No, I'm kidding. He would never have told me to say that. Okay, as you have just seen, 2016 was a very busy year for Clean Lakes Alliance and our community. And this year, the group is going to take on even more projects. To take a closer look at the 2016 numbers and where the group is headed in 2017, please join me in welcoming Clean Lakes Alliance Executive Director James Ty.
Good morning. Thank you all for being very prompt this morning and coming out here to the 6th annual Clean the Lakes Breakfast. Just can't thank you all for your support for the organization and the lakes these past 6 years. As you just saw, 2016 was a great year of progress for our community and unprecedented water clarity, but we got lucky. Environmental conditions were just right for the lakes, and we really can't rely for the luck of Mother Nature to make sure that we have healthy lakes. We need to work on our phosphorus community goal of reducing phosphorus by 50%. As Lloyd Egan said earlier, if we stay in the same path that we are right now, we won't get to our goal of reducing phosphorus by 50%. We need to course correct and increase our efforts towards this vital cause. On page 24 of the annual report, you'll see our Plan 2020, a clear path forward. It outlines 8 areas that the Clean Lakes Alliance will focus on between now and 2020. This strategic framework, through the input of our community board, lakes experts, and community partners, in the typical Madison way. So what is that? You all know it's roundtable discussions, emails, surveys, and the all-famous Madison Post-it boards that go up. Our takeaway from that was that we need to increase our community engagement. There's 750 people here today. I want 1,200. We're going to look at 4 areas in community engagement, and they are education, gain more educational opportunities to the public to learn about the lakes and what the threats are. Volunteerism, like beach cleanups, and more lake events to get people out onto the water and explore our lake parks. Monitoring more of our beaches so people know when the water is clean and when it's not, and so they go to the beach and use the beaches. Citizen actions, and like you saw in the video, get those leaves out of the street and gutters. By increasing our community engagement and knowledge about our lakes, we'll be able to provide more resources and funding for lake improvements. Our number one goal and root cause of all the problems is phosphorus that cause the harmful algae. Plan 2020 also addresses phosphorus reduction in 4 key areas. One nonprofit can't work on 14 at the same time. And you gotta sort of narrow your focus, otherwise you get that sort of big eyes and you don't know what to do and you're doing everything, so we wanna sort of focus. And these are the areas that we think the Clean Lakes Alliance can have the biggest impact. Farmland manure management, leaf management, providing and excelling innovative solutions, and construction erosion. As you saw in the video, these 4 areas contribute a large amount of phosphorus to our lakes, but also have the potential to be adjusted and controlled by more policy work and more programs and more things out on the farmlands in the city to reduce phosphorus. The organization is creating benchmarks and goals for each year, and we are confident with a vision of one community, one water, we can make a difference. Over the next 4 years, Clean Lakes Alliance will work hard to engage more people. We will come out to your company. We'll do talks. We'll get you guys out on the lakes doing volunteer work, and hopefully raise more money. That envelope at your table, it might be a good time to get down and take a browse. Plan 2020 will be a success for our lakes if we all tackle it together. We can all help and achieve our shared goals. Now it's my pleasure to introduce one of the strongest advocates for lake health. Since taking office in 2011, County Executive Joe Parisi has made it clear that a strong, vibrant community starts with clean and healthy lakes. At his direction, the county has funded a number of lake projects, and directly related to reducing phosphorus, reduction. Please join me in welcoming Dane County Executive Joe Parisi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Lee, I'm glad you thanked Sam, because I was going to mention both of you for that video was amazing. I mean, not only the way you distilled this incredibly complicated issue, but the production was really, what's the name of your production company, Sam? Studio 88, I'm just saying, okay? Thanks. Well, as we're seeing, because of our continued partnerships, we are making real progress in our efforts to clean up our lakes. Working with farmers, businesses, environmental advocates, and local communities, we've identified and acted upon a realistic and tangible path. Wow, that's weird. This TV down here has what you're seeing. So I look down there and I see me. I'm going to put that up there. So anyways, our partnership has resulted in a tangible path that reduces phosphorus runoff and is and will result in cleaner lakes. Most of you are familiar with the lakes cleanup work being done by our local farmers who were highlighted. One of the puzzles that presented itself, however, to us a couple years ago was that despite all of the work we're doing upstream and all the effective work the farmers are doing, when we put some monitors in Dorn Creek and started looking at the phosphorus reduction, the phosphorus levels, we weren't getting the reductions that we should have been getting based on what we were doing upstream. So 2 years ago, I put $60,000 in the county budget to further analyze the water quality and phosphorus content of those streams that feed into our lakes. And what we found, as you saw in the video, was that legacy phosphorus, sediment, phosphorus-laden sediment that had been accumulating over the past century in those streams was diffusing phosphorus into the streams and into our lakes. And the testing shows that the phosphorus concentration in that stream sediment is 7 times more potent than what's found on the crop fields in the watershed. So not only is there 7 times the phosphorus, at least in that muck, but you have water constantly running over it. So we know that if we don't remove that phosphorus in the form of sludge that sits on the bottom of these streams, it will take 99 years to see a 50% reduction in the phosphorus that finds its way into our lakes. And obviously no one wants to wait 100 years for cleaner lakes. And even if we shut off somehow magically all the phosphorus that runs into our lakes from ag, from urban sources, from leaves, from everything you saw up there, it would still take 60 years for all the phosphorus in that muck to flush out of the system. And obviously we can't wait that long. We can't accomplish it in this lifetime with getting into those waterways and removing that source of phosphorus that's built up over the past century. Is Jeff Endress here today? Do we have our Yahara Pride farmers with us? Jeff couldn't make it? Well, I'm going to quote Jeff, so if you see Jeff, tell him he was quoted today. Jeff was quoted as saying, "If we don't remove this legacy phosphorus from our streams, we will never be able to meet our water quality goals and fully capitalize on the phosphorus-reducing practices that farmers are implementing." And that video did a great job of showing some of those. There are more than 5,600 acres in our watershed, and county staff and farmers have implemented conservation and runoff reduction practices on 90% of those lands. Soil testing shows that the farmlands in the watershed are on average already 2 times better than the state standards on phosphorus concentration. So our farmers deserve a lot of credit for the work that they're doing. Thank you. So as was mentioned, in addition to the work the farmers are doing, that Dane County this year will invest, Dane County has decided to invest $12 million over the next 4 years to get into that sludge and remove 870,000 pounds of phosphorus from 33 miles of streams. This is our, I thought I'd pause, I heard someone start to. And when I say Dane County, I'm not saying Joe Parisi, I'm saying myself, our staff, the county board, and all of you who are county residents and county taxpayers, because what we're doing as county government is reflecting what we believe to be your values and what you want us to do. So you all deserve a round of applause for that too. So the first installment of $4 million for this effort was included in the 2017 county budget as part of a $10 million overall lakes cleanup budget for this year. Our partnership with the farmers, private, public, and nonprofit sector is working, and we're removing runoff at an unprecedented pace. But this partnership only works, as we've seen, because we work together. We don't point fingers, and we rely on our hardworking farm families to lead the way, because we cannot do this without them. Despite our successes, every so often well-intentioned people will propose imposing new mandates on Dane County's family farms. Mandates that could, quite frankly, in some cases, put some of our small and medium-sized farms out of business. Mandates, for example, like an outright ban on spreading manure during the winter months. Winter spreading, as we've seen and as we know, is certainly an issue we need to and are addressing. But this challenge, like others, can only effectively be addressed by working in partnership with our farmers rather than risking a return to the path of finger pointing. By working with our farmers, we're getting them the tools they need that will allow them to spread manure where and when it makes the best sense for our lakes and to get to it in a way that helps them survive. I'll give you an example. Last month, using a county matching grant, the Meyer Farm built a manure storage facility that will allow them to store winter manure through the winter months. In exchange, the Meyers have agreed not to spread manure from December 1st to March 31st. A win-win proposition that stops winter spreading, protects our lakes and farm families, and the rural character of our community. So, I think my time is getting up. I'm going to introduce our next person. The point I want to make is we need to continue these partnerships and working together, and I appreciate the Clean Lakes Alliance effort to bring all these folks together to do so. So our keynote speaker is Dr. Mark Riedel. Mark is a hydrologist and project manager with the Wisconsin DNR. He has over 20 years of experience conducting water quality, river, and habitat restoration projects, and previously worked as a senior research hydrologist with the U.S. Forest Service. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mark Riedel. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Certainly is a humbling honor to be asked to present to you all. I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to see all of the wonderful work that's going on, all the talks of partnerships. Oh, you're right, that's strange. Your picture is on there. I've only been with the DNR going on 4 years, and I'll just step outside of the DNR for a minute and I'll say we're incredibly lucky as a state and as a region. The quality of the staff that I've encountered working with the DNR, the quality of the staff that I've encountered working with the county, it's phenomenal. I've worked in states all over the eastern U.S., all over the western Great Lakes, ecosystem restoration projects going back nearly 25 years. And I've been involved in federal lawsuits, states that aren't implementing the Clean Water Act. It's amazing. It's wonderful. And this region is very fortunate to have such a wealth of talent, skill, and dedicated people. That said, I'm not an expert in the Madison Lakes, and I don't claim to be. And I'm certainly not an expert on the history of Madison. I'm a little bit familiar with it. So I'll just start off with that caveat. And I believe if I push this, there we go. So today I'm going to talk to you about one community, one water. And when I go out, I spend a lot of my work, I'm out in the country, out in rural communities, working with producers, working with smaller communities, and I talk about the idea of finding common ground. And we all have common ground that we work on. The society that we live in, we've taken a very long time to build. Decades, over a century, nearly 2 centuries actually. A lot of inertia, a lot of momentum, a lot of great minds, changing expectations, that sort of thing. But it's a voyage. We are on a voyage, a large, massive ship with all sorts of people doing all sorts of different things, industrious things. And we also have the vision of hindsight as 2020. Changing the course of a big ship takes time. And that's part of what I'll be talking about. Early on in our history, it was recognized that southern Wisconsin in particular was an incredibly desirable place to move to if you were an immigrant. My family stopped there on their way up to northwestern and northwestern Wisconsin as farm immigrants. And it was identified as among the most fertile and beautiful land in the West. The early settlers were eager to reach this valley. And that was from Increase Lapham, who was an early surveyor and engineer that originally came here to build a canal to connect the Rock River with the Milwaukee. Thankfully, that didn't happen. So on this voyage, I'm going to take us back a few steps, and just for the first few slides here, and kind of frame the course that we're going on. But the settlers started coming in droves. And early settlement, obviously, we're attracted to water, to build mills for power, water for cattle, water for transportation, water for navigation and mapping. How do we get around? It's difficult to navigate, but we know where the rivers are. We built these early cities. The first thing we did was we laid out the roads, which were dirt and often covered with manure from the horses, was grade them so they would drain into the rivers. Of course, we brought cows and livestock. My family did, all the families did, and they always needed water. Sometimes we didn't like the way the lakes looked. We thought that we had better ideas for them, and so we built massive dredging projects, and we dredged lakes, we moved shorelines, we invested money to build communities for real estate, this sort of thing. We made channels where there weren't channels previously. We changed water levels dramatically. We completely altered the hydrology of the lake system that was here originally, which was a complex flowage of interconnected lakes and wetlands. But we also recognize the error of our ways. This article from 1924, the Lakes and Harbor Commission recognized that, hey, we've got some problems here. We're loving our lakes, we've got boathouses on the lakes, there's agriculture, there's these things going on, and when I go out swimming or when I'm paddling, I see poo in the water. And because we have boathouses right on the lake, and the boathouses have outhouses in them that go right into the lake. So certainly we've had changing and conflicting expectations for the history of being here. As we move forward into the Great Depression, people came to the cities because they were starving. They came to the cities looking for work because there were no jobs. The lumber camps where my family ended up being in northwestern Wisconsin, many of those collapsed as industry collapsed. They came to the cities looking for jobs. People were starving, literally. People were literally starving. We had brought over carp in the late 1800s, soon realized it was a mistake, but by the 1930s, we had food relief stations set up, including Lake Kiganza. And there are people in this community who are probably alive today because a grandparent or a great-grandparent was eating carp out of these lakes. It's an interesting relationship. We didn't always treat the lakes well, and this is true everywhere. I'm not just talking about Madison, okay? I'm talking about everywhere. We used our lakes for dumps. This happened in northern Wisconsin too. It happened in Minnesota, all over the place. Direct discharge from woolen mills, factories, milk waste. This is the Milwaukee River, 1951. There was a massive petroleum spill, and at the time, as still is often the case, the storm drains that were there connected directly to the river. And so the firefighters brought their hoses out to take care of the spill. And they said, we're going to wash it into the river. And they washed all the soil into the river, and it caught on fire, and it burned for 3 days. The value of $50,000 worth of oil, if we don't even adjust for the cost of crude today, that's almost $500,000 of oil that burned in the Milwaukee River. And at times, we used to pump sewage into the lakes. We all did it. We didn't know better. That's just the way it operated. On our rivers, we had so much phosphorus in the rivers that following storm events, below dams, there'd be huge mountains of foam from the phosphates that were in the water. Below hydroelectric dams, tree lines extending 10, 20, 30 feet up in the air, even to the point of hitting bridges below the dams, the foam would wipe out all the vegetation going down the rivers. And of course, fish kills. Along this time, we had these conflicting steps moving back and forth of how we're going to address this. But what really caught people's attention was the Cuyahoga River. And this is an example of one of the 17 fires on the Cuyahoga River that occurred. I worked on the Cuyahoga River for 4 years on a fish habitat and restoration project, and it's still incredibly contaminated soils. But the recovery that's happened in the Cuyahoga, in the Little Cuyahoga, is astounding. And the fish passage work and the remediation work, it's not perfect, no. It definitely has room to go. But it has been a remarkable recovery that has occurred there. All this led up to the Clean Water Act. We had some stops and starts. The River and Harbors Act of 1899, the original Water Pollution Control Act of 1948, and there's always great tension. It's going to lose jobs. It's going to kill utilities. and there's always these economic trade-offs. But after these confluence of events come together, the Clean Water Act was passed in 1972. And just some quick background for folks that maybe are not familiar with it. There's basically 3 things we have to do with the Clean Water Act. Here in the state of Wisconsin, we're fortunate. We're an authorized partner in a state-federal partnership to implement the Clean Water Act. So the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, we have the authority to implement the Clean Water Act on behalf of the citizens of the state. That's a very good place to be in. Not all states are in that position. Georgia is an example. I was involved in the TMDL lawsuits in Georgia. They lost their authority. So their decisions are being made in the EPA office many states away. First thing we have to do is we have to develop water quality standards. They're often narrative, because this goes back in history when we didn't have the science and the data. We want them to be swimmable, we want them to be fishable, drinking water, etc. But we quickly learned that this isn't going to get us where we need to be. We need a way to quantify what's going on. And so in Wisconsin, we developed numeric phosphorus criteria. And when I say we, this happened at the DNR before I was there. But it was an amazing endeavor. I've dug into the science and the work that went into it, and I'm really impressed. And I know it was very controversial, but it is an excellent tool. It's an excellent way to help us get on track and see where we're going. The second thing we have to do is, once we have those standards developed, we have to, every 2 years, inventory our waters and develop a list of waters that aren't meeting those standards and what's causing those impairments. And so it's about the impairments of the standards. We can't swim in it, we can't fish in it, there's unsightly pollution, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of lakes and rivers in the state. And so it takes quite a while to go through all the lakes and rivers. So every 2 years we put out a biennial list of impaired waters, and there's always waters added to it. And sometimes in the media, or sometimes people misunderstand and they think, oh, we're getting worse, we're getting worse, we're getting worse. We're not. We're sampling a huge population of lakes and rivers, thousands upon thousands of miles of rivers and thousands upon thousands of lakes. And so we're going to continue adding to that list as we go through the process of looking at all these waters in the state. We're also starting to remove them, which means that the impairments have been removed and the uses are restored. We do this obviously for the impaired waters, but in Wisconsin, we say that's not enough. We have waters that are in good shape, and we want to protect those. We don't want those to backslide, and so we make sure that we also address the healthy waters, the outstanding waters, the extraordinary waters. Third, we have to develop what's called a total maximum daily load, TMDL for short, if you hear that term. And the easiest way to think about what a TMDL is let's think about ourselves, all right? How many of us go and get our physical every year? Come on, show of hands, wake up. I know, I haven't shown that many graphs yet. All right, just wait till you get to the tables. So when you get in there to do your physical, how many of you like to step on the scale? Show of hands, don't raise your hand. This is for demonstration purposes only, so you know what not to do. That's what a TMDL is. A TMDL is an honest look. It's your doctor telling you, you need a lifestyle change. You can't live the life you want. You can't live the life you deserve. You've got to do a lifestyle change. You have to exercise more. You have to go on a diet. Here's the plan. I'm not going to tell you how to get there, but here is the plan. Or here's what you need to do. You need to lose this much weight, this kind of diet, or whatever. Okay? The Clean Water Act, once we develop TMDLs, directly gives us authority to write permits for point source dischargers. Think of pipes that discharge into the rivers. Wastewater treatment plants, utilities, CAFOs, large cities, over 10,000 people, they have permits. And one of the things that I really want to, I'm not in the wastewater program with DNR, I'm in watersheds, so I'll just throw that caveat out here first. Over 90% of our permittees in the Rock River Basin, since the TMDL was published in 2011, over 90% of our permittees have TMDL limits written in them. That's amazing. If people here haven't traveled much outside of the state of Wisconsin to know what's going on in other states, there are states that are struggling to just write permits, let alone TMDL limits. And that's absolutely amazing. And I've been so impressed with the wastewater staff and folks at the agency for doing this, because this has really provided an impetus to move forward into advanced work. On the non-point side, we don't have that direct authority from the Clean Water Act. We don't have permits to give to smaller farms. So the program that we use, some people say it's voluntary, and that's not accurate. We have agriculture performance standards and runoff standards. We have rules. The way that they're implemented is through programs where we offer cost share to producers. But to say that we don't have standards, we don't have rules, that's not accurate. And just echoing some of the comments that were made earlier about all the progress that has been made with producers. For example, this is in Dodge County, and I'll direct your attention to, I can't do the laser, here, I'll point on here so I can see it. Okay, so those, you can't see them? So the two lower lines, the red line and the blue line. The red line is completely at standard. It's actually below standard, and the blue line is just about or below standard. Those two watersheds are completely farmed. And so those are working agricultural watersheds where the farmers are doing practices, pulling crops off the land, running their operations, doing the practices, and they're meeting criteria. But we have to look at reality. And so I'm going to take a step back and say we have to look at reality. The programs that we have done a great amount of work, made a lot of progress. Priority watershed projects, educating producers, they've been excellent programs in the non-point world. But farms are private businesses. And when we look at the dollar amounts that are available for funding, and we look at the scales in Wisconsin, for every dollar that we have available from total project funds to put towards non-point working with producers, there's far more money driving agriculture the old way. Far more money that encourages producers to either farm on land that shouldn't be farmed or discourages them from implementing practices. There's been a lot of struggle over the last 30 to 40 years because of this imbalance. We haven't understood the economy. The farmers have because they're stuck in the middle, and we haven't listened to the farmers when the farmers have told us, you don't understand what we're struggling against. I need to be able to get insurance. I need to be able to do this. I need to be able to make sure I've got room in my storage elevator. You don't understand what I'm struggling against. And this huge imbalance is what they're struggling against, and it's driven by the economy. Multi-billion-dollar economy that far outpaces any program that we can offer locally, state, or federal combined. So we cannot solve the problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them, right? If we want to change the course of the ship that we're on. James, honestly, you know, I didn't get my PowerPoint done in time, so I brought it here this morning and they had to do the formatting. That's pretty funny. That's a cow udder. I kid. So I want to give an example. RBGH, bovine growth hormone. For folks that don't know what it is, it's a naturally occurring hormone in cows that triggers milk production. And for decades, the agricultural industry, dairy industry in particular, worked to synthesize it to increase milk production in cows. And court battles, millions of dollars invested. In 1993, they rolled out RBGH, and they said by the year 2000, we're going to have over 90% of the herd nationwide using RBGH. Well, I'm not endorsing any brands here. This is for example purposes only, okay? Organic producers weren't using RBGH anyway, but that's a very small part of the market. But moms came out and they said, you know what? I don't want that stuff in my milk. I am going to pay more for milk that does not have growth hormone in it. I will pay 50 cents more a gallon. I will pay $1 more a gallon. I will pay more to have milk that does not have growth hormone in it. And with only a couple of years, local dairy producers, local dairies, started offering different brands of milk that did not have bovine growth hormone in it. Well, if you're out and you're working with dairies, you can't run 2 sets of trucks, 2 sets of equipment, 2 sets of operations for producing your milk to run 2 separate milk streams. I mean, that's why milk with antibiotics is dumped. It's just financially, it's not possible. The outcome of this is that today, all of the predominant chain brands of milk in our stores in the area are RBGH free. And they don't even advertise it because that is what the market has driven. The farmers have responded to demand. The grocery stores responded to demand. The dairies responded to demand. And in just 7 short years, far quicker than any government program could do, by voting with dollars, it completely changed a multi-billion-dollar industry for consumers to get what they wanted to get. Shifting gears a little bit, talking about the Minneapolis chain of lakes. I lied to you earlier. Some of those photos I showed you were actually from the Minneapolis chain of lakes. Some of you may have caught that. The history of the lakes in the upper Midwest is very similar. Similar immigrants, similar desires, similar dreams, similar climate, similar geology, similar farming practices. The Minneapolis chain of lakes, 181 square miles. If you look on the right, you can see Minneapolis. There's 9 lakes in a chain there. Lake of the Isles, Sweeney Lake, Brownie Lake, Cedar Lake, which also has Merritt Beach, and a couple of the big lakes many people are familiar with. All part of the Minnehaha Creek complex that goes far into west of the Twin Cities, into agricultural area. Land that, in many places, looks much like land we have up near Wanakee. These lakes are the central focus point of the city of Minneapolis, and they were experiencing impairments. Algal blooms, high levels of pesticides, extreme sedimentation, siltation, and the community got together. And the community said, this is not acceptable. The businesses said, this is not acceptable. We want to be an attractive city for people. This needs to change. And so they started in the early 1980s. They said, what are we going to do to address this? How are we going to change this? Well, there's a lot of lakes, and it's a big problem, so they said, we're only going to eat this elephant one bite at a time. And so they did a focused effort, and they said, let's focus where we can make the most difference. So they started on an upstream lake, because they know the benefits of that upstream lake are going to propagate downstream. Sound familiar? It's a great strategy. This is Lake of the Isles, where they focused most of their effort. Obviously, you can see downtown Minneapolis. Lake of the Isles is similar to lakes around here. Water levels were raised. There was intensive dredging in the past. Lots of stormwater runoff. This lake needed a lot of help. There were times in the summer the entire surface of the lake was covered with aquatic plants. I mean, it was just a cesspool. And this is one of the most desired neighborhoods in Madison. Over a 20-year period, from the 1980s up to early 2000s, this city invested $12.5 million just on this lake. And they put on, oh, I'm running out of time, I'm going too slow. Okay, long and short of it, they had a huge increase in water clarity. It went from 2 feet to 4 feet. Phosphorus concentrations went from 75 to less than 25 micrograms per liter. But it's never easy. And so they still have problems, they still have challenges that they're facing. But they recognize that those improvements that they made are lasting, and they are benefiting downstream. For the Madison Lakes, we've had quite a bit of talk about the Yahara winds. I won't launch into that. It's an excellent example, though, of partners to come together, cities, communities, the Sewerage District, Rock River Coalition, and obviously Clean Lakes Alliance to partner for a better future. The challenges we have are different perspectives. Some of us see a boat, some of us see land. And these are always the challenges that face groups when they work together, is how do we deal with these? How do we reconcile these conflicting perspectives? The perspectives aren't necessarily wrong, and we need to recognize that. And the important thing is coming together and having a common understanding. Watching out for hidden agendas, and with large projects, you will have this happen. Groups will come in that will try and steer a project in another direction. This happened on the Minneapolis Lakes on projects that I worked on. Groups came in, they saw that we had power, we had connections, we had the voice of the ear of the mayor, and they tried to launch their own agenda. Cumulative effects are important. We've stacked all this weight on the lakes, and we're slowly removing them. We can't expect change overnight. One thing that's important for our Madison Lakes, if we look at Lake Mendota, we look at, this is just a graph of Secchi depth, but we're generally in that area, that gray circle, we're generally in that area where we can make positive change. And that's a very good place to be. Ultimately, it's about individual commitment to a group effort. That's what makes a team work, a company work, a society work, and a civilization work, is bringing all those people together with different interests and different opinions on how things can be done to help the lakes. What kind of progress have we made so far? This is the Rock River at Afton, near Beloit. Look at the reductions in phosphorus concentrations since the 60s. This is phenomenal. Massive reductions in phosphorus through partnerships, efforts by cheese factories, wastewater treatment facilities, farmers, producers, everybody working together. And when you have this diverse group of people working together with all sorts of talents, things get squirrely. And it always does, especially in these larger projects. Things get squirrely. And I threw up Sesame Street here, not as a joke, but I remember watching Sesame Street and Grover and Bert and Ernie doing all the kind of squirrely stuff, and you're a kid and you love it. But there was always that one at the center that was up a little taller than everybody else with that long-term vision of keeping everybody on track, keeping everybody following that same vision, and that was Big Bird, right? And long-term watershed restoration projects, big-scale projects like this, they all need a Big Bird. They all need somebody who can work and help herd all the cats, because all the individual cats doing their own thing is important. But to achieve the goals, that long-term vision, You've got to have that big bird with a long-term vision who says, hey, and keeps things in line. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all on the same ship on this voyage. And the ship was on a course. And if we want to nudge the direction of that great big ship, every one of those players is a little tugboat. And we have to all be pushing in the same direction. And we need to have a big bird at the wheel. And we need to have science and UW at the helm telling us if there's an iceberg coming. We all play a role. Thank you.
You're taller than me. Thank you to Dr. Riedel for, I loved your perspective in terms of your experience around the Midwest and eastern part of our country. Isn't it nice to have reaffirmed that we're doing great work here? It's really great to have that perspective. So thank you for that, and hopefully that inspires all of you here today. I know some of you need to run, but we honestly only have like 10 more minutes, so I'm hoping you can just stay with me, hang out. We have some individuals we are going to present with our 3rd annual Lumley Leadership Awards, and this is for their passion and dedication to our lakes. These 3 awards recognize leaders in 3 categories: lake stewardship, volunteerism, and organizational commitment to Clean Lakes efforts. And on the screens, you can see our past award winners. The first Lumley Leadership Award is Lake Stewardship. And this year's winner took an operation that was problematic and viewed negatively in the community and turned it into a positively run manure digester benefiting our watershed in less than a year. With a simple mission, we put waste to work. The digester outside of Wanakee now processes manure at a more efficient rate than ever before. Manure digesters are a big part of the Hara Clean Plan, and the more positively they run, the better chance we have as a community to build more in our watershed. John Hakel and Jessica Niekritz, would you please come forward to receive the Clean Fuel Partners Lumley Leadership Award for Lake Stewardship. Our second Lumley Leadership Award is Volunteer Service, and this person has been a part of Clean Lakes Alliance since the beginning. He stepped up to the plate and helped found the Friends of Clean Lakes Board and has been a member ever since, helping provide important leadership and input toward financial fundraising and friend-raising plans. He's been involved with or sponsored every event Clean Lakes Alliance hosts and always looks for ways to promote what he's doing with his friends and neighbors. As many of you know, this person's passion for the lakes runs deep, whether it's piloting one of his sailboats, even the ones that have been struck by lightning, or run into by another boat. Yes, there are some stories. Or even taking evening cruises with his friends. He enjoys his time on our lakes. Trey Sprinkman, please come forward and accept your well-deserved Lumley Leadership Award. And our third and final Lumley Leadership Award is Organizational Commitment. This company has been a long-standing supporter of Clean Lakes Alliance. The company engaged with Clean Lakes Alliance before anybody even knew what Clean Lakes Alliance was in our community. And they helped share the vision of how frozen assets could help engage people across Madison and the surrounding area. In fact, through their financial sponsorship this year, Frozen Assets was able to net $170,000. Through sponsorships of major events, this year the organization and execution of the first and hopefully annual Frozen Assets Ice Fishing Derby, this company has always made lake health a priority. Additionally, a corporate leader from this company has been an active member of the community board for the past few years. And finally, as a leader in the construction industry, this company takes erosion issues seriously and is working to be a leader in construction erosion prevention. So Eric Schmidt and Sarah Dunn, please come forward to accept C.G. Schmidt's Lumley Leadership Award for organizational commitment. And next, I'd like to introduce someone who has been telling us stories in the Madison area for more than 30 years. He grew up with his family, spending time on our lakes whenever he could. And if you've picked up a Madison Magazine in the last 15 years or so, you know that his local flavor is always punched up by the column right in the back of the magazine article for each issue. So please join me in welcoming lake enthusiast John Roach.
I'm going to be quick because if you're late to work saying I had to stay to listen to John Roach speak, you'll be downsized. First of all, I just want to give a shout out to James Ty. It was about 6 years ago that he asked me to come to Sardine when they were launching the Clean Lakes Alliance, and my sole job, because it was in a bar, was to yell, "Hey, shut up and get up here!" And James said, "Well, you know, you could do that again today, actually." I'm so impressed by what James has done because I think any cause needs an advocate. And if you're going to be a good advocate, you need to be a good promoter. I think these live shots of the lake are amazing. And while I was watching them right at the beginning, fish started surfacing. And I turned to James and I said, "You hired those fish, didn't you?" And he goes, yes, I did. First of all, as a townie who writes a column, it's been my experience that we are more of a small town than we care to admit, which is a good thing. And to that end, I have some data to complement all the scientific information that has been trotted out today. And that data is commonly referred to as gossip, which I've heard, because I'm a little bit of a lightning rod because I have a column. So here's what I've heard to all the board members for the Clean Lakes Alliance and everyone who's donated. "Hey, the weeds aren't that bad this year." Or, "The lake's actually pretty good." Or as I heard a child say, "The lakes stink better this year." So everyone with clean lakes, congratulations. Finally, one observation, it comes from being a townie. And I trot out townie a lot, even though I lived in Chicago for about a decade, because I think, not to beat anyone up with it, but to say that I'm any more of a Madisonian than anyone else. But it's kind of amazing to me how few media members in Madison or newspaper people in Madison are native Madisonians. And for what it's worth, I think there's some value in going back many, many decades in this community to having been born and raised here, as well as the deep roots that my mom and dad had. So I'm not saying I'm any better or worse, but I do think that institutional community memory has value. This is an observation, and I'm going to read 600 words. I went out on my new Trek bike last week and went down through my old Vilas neighborhood along Lake Wingrove, where I used to have my paper route, both the State Journal and Cap Times. And on the 1500 block of Vilas, just on the other side of Grant, there's a circle with beautiful bur oaks and effigy mounds. The most obvious one is a bear. And it made me stop and think how long our lakes have attracted human beings to the isthmus. Now, my mom was an orphan from Chicago, raised by the Edgewood nuns in the late 30s and 40s, and she spoke of playing on the effigy mounds that used to line Lake Wingrove. Some still remain, not enough. But she talked about how mystical it was. And just like those mounds and their mysticism are just like our lakes. They are the old souls that guard and define us. They predate us in a way that transcends time and, to some extent, understanding. The great scientist Jared Diamond, if you haven't read his books, they're killer, highly readable. He wrote Collapse and Gun, Germs, and Steel. He's put forth the notion that it is the natural resources that define a people and their fate. Oh, hey! You hired him too, right? Is he after SAG? I think that's killer. Thank God it's not Mazo Beach. So our lakes have defined us by creating this isthmus that has shoved and corralled so much intellect and industry into this confined strip of land surrounded by this necklace of lakes. It has forced us together, and in so doing created the beautiful cultural stew that is Madison. And in the true spirit of pantheism, if we do not treat these old souls of our community with respect and reverence, they will over time exact their revenge on us. For without the beauty and health of our lakes, we would be just another college town. We could end up being Champaign-Urbana. Now, there's probably some U of I graduates here. I'm sure it's a lovely town, but you came here for Halloween. Also, if you really want to know what a community with bad water looks like, watch Naked and Afraid for 10 minutes. So anyhow, I just have 600 more words. It's a vain writer who thinks anyone reads their stuff, but I have a captive audience, so here are a few words. And I just want to preface this by saying, I think I've written for a column for 24 years, pretty much on a dare bet at the Bar Fest Hotel with Doug Moe. And throughout the years, I've referred to my wife, Diane, in the column as the bride. And some of her friends have thought it was kind of sweet. And then just the other day, Diane mentioned, she goes, yeah, one of my friends thought it was kind of condescending. And I said, well, hon, I could refer to you as aging female mate. And without even looking up, she goes, bride's fine. So, without any hesitation, a reading from the columnist John to the Madisonians. Turn page. Blue Mind. I'd been telling the bride for a couple of years that we need to replace our small 20-year-old pier at our cabin up north. She is smart with nickels, and as usual scoffed at my latest hourly idea on spending money. So it was fitting that the pier's wooden slats helped me make my case with a loud crack as I leaned forward to help our visitors pull their pontoon up to the pier. Fully clothed, I descended into the waters of our Northwoods Lake, being sure, like any dork, to hold my goofy Apple Watch over my head while everyone howled at my expense. Turn page. I am always happy to be in the waters of our lake, so I wasn't angry. In fact, it fills me with joy just to look at it, just as it makes me happy to gaze upon our Madison lakes. And now we know why. Thanks to a guy named Wallace J. Nichols. He turned my head when I heard him on NPR discussing his new book, Blue Mind. This title alludes to the state we achieve emotionally and psychologically when we are in or around water. Water, says Nichols, can bring peace to our anxious souls. And he should know because he's a renowned scientist who spent time in the water with sensors on his head. In addition to blue mind, Nichols asserts that we also have red mind when we're frazzled and gray mind when we have lost hope. Nichols' work has verified what we already know in our hearts and souls. Water soothes us because it is from whence we came, a powerful notion for Madison and Dane County given our bounty of lakes and vistas they provide. Our lakes have struggled from the days when my 87-year-old dad would fish Lake Mendota for perch and be able to look down 15 feet and pick the fish he wanted. Also, by the way, he just reminded me, he was here in the 30s when they would cut ice from the lake, store it in sawdust, and deliver it to your home in the summer for your ice boxes by horse. So he would be able to pick out his fish, but it ruffles the peace of a blue mind when we gaze upon this water and endure odor, algae, and weeds that just shouldn't be there. Stuff like that quickly turns a blue mind into a red mind or even a gray mind. It also undermines our claim to be the absolutely most livable place in the universe. How can we be so very wonderful when our lakes are in such distress? When I was a kid, it was a big deal for our parents to pile us into the station wagon and go explore our beaches. They were water parks for us, but not inside and at the Dells. We loved the stone steps at Tenney, the exotic woods of the Willows, the Monona fun of B.B. Clark, and the sheer joy of the mother of all beaches, Vilas, where you could swim and hear lions roar. But park and beach usage has dropped precipitously since those days, as has access to a certain extent to our waters. Sure, the Union Terrace, Edgewater, James Madison offer open access, but not enough. The approved Overlook Park Beer Garden, if it fends off some of the usual insufferable NIMBYs, can bring a terrace experience to Monona, but the consistent peace that water brings us still is most available to those with considerable resources to buy a home on our lakes. We have 192 billion gallons of water surrounding Madison and Dane County, with 58 miles of shoreline on the Yahara chain. Yet the sad truth is that the fine work Madison has done over the last 30 years to improve bike paths, restaurants, hotels, and State Street has not really extended to our lakes and the parks and beaches that nestle alongside them. There is word that the Clean Lakes Alliance is working on this parks and beach problem, which would be absolutely great. Because it is true, the more we use our lakes, the more inclined everyone will be to improve and protect them. We will all have a stake. And then as one, we will achieve the blue mind that water affords us all, especially if your wife lets you buy a new pier. The end. Thank you.
Pretty funny. I liked it. Want to thank John, and you know, it's just a good reminder, not that you all need one, right? We might be preaching to the choir, but it's a great reminder of why we all need to support our lakes. Give me 2 more minutes of your time, and then everyone will be able to go. I want to thank everyone for coming and partnering with the Clean Lakes Alliance. Thank you to our sponsors, our speakers, the many volunteers who made today's event possible. Please remember those pledge cards in the large envelopes on your tables. Table captains, you can leave those with the Clean Lakes Alliance staff and volunteers on your way out. Don't forget your mug. It's very nice. You can have coffee tomorrow and every day this summer and think about what you're going to do to contribute to this effort to keep our lakes clean. Before we go, we want to give you one more look at why the health of our lakes is important to everyone in our community.
The Clean Lakes Alliance.
Clean Lakes Alliance.
Clean Lakes Alliance.
Trying to keep the lakes clean.
Long-term health of the lakes,
rivers, and wetlands.
Right now I'm in the middle of Lake Monona.